my name's Dan, and in this video we're going to cover a topic called binding in the use of widget blueprints, sometimes known as Unreal Motion Graphics, UMG. This is how you can get elements on the part of the user interface and displayed on the screen to change depending on what's going on in the game. So it creates a dependency for that element on other parts of the game. So this is the other side of interaction from what we did in the last video in this series, which is showing you how to get interaction from the user to the interface by using events. This is the other side, and it's called binding. So let's do a quick talk through what we've got here. I've got a standard third-person template, which is my favorite template to use, and I've got a little widget set up. So this is slightly expanded from the one that I used in the previous video. It was still got the quit button in there, which is still operational. All the code for all that is still in there. And I've got a couple of things. Let's go and have a look at them. So I've got a little box here that has the word elevation in. We'll do that second. We're going to have a bar that shows the elevation. I'll talk through that. I'll look at this first, and then I'll talk through that. And then we've got a timer up in the top right. So I've got some text that says timer, and at the moment it's saying 0. So the structure of this is that, well, we've got a canvas panel that everything's sitting on. Our button and text is here, and the elevation is done in a horizontal box. So we've got the the time is the horizontal box. We've got the text time, and then the text that's actually going to display the time next to it. And then in our vertical box, so far we've got the text that says elevation, and we'll add a widget to that in due course. But let's do the time first. So I'm going to zoom out again so I can see what I'm doing. Now, the other thing that I've set up in this widget is a little timer. So in the graph, I have left some code in there from previously. So please excuse me as I just get rid of a few things. But I always run through stuff beforehand to check that everything's working. So I'm just going to get rid of these functions. Apologies for this. So what I want to be looking at is the event graph. So in the event graph, I've got a simple thing that has a timer. So we've got a variable here called timer. And we're just going to get this to respond. For the variable to have added to its delta time. So we're using event tick, and it's just counting up as we go through. So that's just going to count up in seconds. So that's a fairly standard thing to want to do with the timer. So you've got the variable, and then you add to it the delta seconds, and then you set the timer to make it happen. Right, so how do we get this to display on the screen? And the answer is quite simply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the text block that we're wanting to use, which is this one with the number. And I'm going to zoom in so that we can see a bit more closely what's going on. We can't quite see the number itself because it's hidden by these arrows, but we don't need to worry about that. What I'm going to is in the details here. Oh, by the way, I've got some padding on these elements, just so they're not absolutely butting up against each other. It looks better. But what I want is to alter the content. So this is where the content is, the text. And you'll see that to the right of this, there's this drop-down box that says bind. And basically, we're going to tell it where it's going to get a value to put that text in. And we have no bindings because I have just deleted all the functions that might be usable for bindings. So we're going to do create binding. And what that does is it gives us a function which will return text, and it's just called get text at the moment. I could change that name if I wanted to over here. Generally, I can't be bothered for small projects, but when I've got larger projects, you want to stay on top of naming so that you know what's giving you what. In fact, tell you what, let's actually do that. Just going to call it time text. There we go. So what this does is there's a function that returns text, and then that text is fed into that text element. So what we need to do is we need to get the variable timer, which we're updating, and just plug that straight in. This will do an automatic conversion to text float, and it is as easy as that. Once you know that it's finding the thing to the right, this bind button here. So this is now bound to time text. Here you can see there's one for color and opacity. We're not going to use that, but we could bind to that. There's various different things that can be bound, as you can see through here. So let's have a quick look at that and play. And up on our top right, if we zoom in, we can see that time is ticking up. And it's just linked straight into that variable, basically, except we need a little conversion. So let's do the elevation. I need to stop playing. So back into down widget. So what I want to use is I'm going to use like a visual element rather than a textual element here. And there's a really useful element called a progress bar. Now, you'd imagine a progress bar is something that gives you kind of, loading progress or something like that. And that's exactly what you can use it for. But you can use it for loads of other things as well, because it's basically just a bar that fills with a color from one side to the other, or, in several ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag that progress bar down into my vertical box to add it to there. Now it's come out quite thin. I don't want it to be thin. Got this problem that I can't actually see the widgets to change the size of that. So I'm just going to do the size Y. No, that's the vertical box. Progress bar. Let's try and find the size. Auto fill. Greedily attempts to fill. Oh, there we go. That's nice. If we do fill, it will fill up the rest of this vertical box. However, I've done it. And the number that shows how far advanced it is this % number. And if I pull that across, that's giving us 0 to 1. It says %, so you'd expect it to be. Let's zoom in. You'd expect it to be a number from 0 to 100, but it's not. It's a number from 0 to 1. Zoom back out again. And the other thing you'll notice is that it's actually doing it from left to right. And what we want is, because it's elevation, we want to do from the bottom to the top. So we can change the bar fill type here, and we're just going to do this bottom to top, which is the bottom choice. And then we'll demonstrate that again. Here we go. And again, all we need to do is to create a binding. What we're going to do is it's going to be the elevation of where the player is in the world. And you'll notice here when I click on this that actually this has exposed the timer variable itself. Now, we weren't able to see that when we were trying to bind the text for the timer, because the timer is a number and the text is a text. So it can't automatically directly link to a variable when there's a non-text variable when it's text. It has to create a function. If I just click on timer, let's show you what will happen here. So I've just bound to that timer variable. This will fill up as the timer goes. There we go. That's not what we want to do with that though. So let's go back and change this and change this and create a binding. This is going to create another function. So what we want is the player elevation. So we need to get player character And then we need to get world location. And it gives us a choice of whether we want it for the capsule component or for the mesh, which are two of the elements that are part of the player character. I don't really care, so I'm just going to use the mesh. So it does get mesh first, then get world location. And this is a vector with 3 values. I will do a series of videos on vectors coming up on the channel soon. If vectors scare you or confuse you or anything like that. I'm just going to do break vector into 3F, and we need the Z. Now, the Z it's going to go from around 0, it's slightly more than 0, up to about 350, I've noticed. So what we need to do is to get this in the range of 0 to 1. So the way to do that is to divide. So I'll just put a slash in to get that, and we'll divide by 350 to get that. Finally, we've got a number that we can use, which is between 0 and 1, and I can plug in there to the return node. There's a whole line there of getting the exact piece of information. And this is typically what you're doing in bindings, is that more commonly than binding to variables inside your widget, you're binding to something else somewhere in the game. And here it's details of the player character. It might be something that's in your game instance, for example. If you've got a score that you're keeping in the game instance, then you'd be getting that by doing get game instance and whatever else you need to get out there. So let's show this, hopefully working. And the elevation looks like it's got nothing on, but when I jump up there, you can see it moving up. And I have deliberately set those values so that it gets to maximum when I get up here and jump. So there's all sorts of ways you can bind into the user interface stuff and get it to display things. Basically, the limit is your imagination, really. There's a whole load of very useful widgets that are provided by Unreal for you to do things, and you can repurpose them in all sorts of interesting ways. So that's how to get your HUD to show stuff from what's happening in the game, and that's it from me for now.